Hi, I'm Stephen Levi, founder of Universal Martial Systems. With me today is Justin Bryant and Carl Jerome, and we're going to take a look at the mount and a few submissions from the mount. There's a couple of different ways that you can do the mount. One simple way that we're going to show you today is what we call the high mount. And basically what you're going to be doing is coming up far enough that your knees are underneath his arms. And this is going to prevent your opponent that's on the bottom from having a lot of mobility with his arms to do strikes. One of the things, the problem is if he sits back a little bit, those arms are now free for him to try to strike, more easy for him to grab you and push and shove. And not only that, because you're sitting so far back on his hips, it's also easy for him to try to buck you off. So, we're going to move up forward and drag your knees up underneath his arms. Now, from there, if you're doing ground and pound, you're in a really good position from here to strike. But let's just say that we're just doing pure submissions right now. We're going to do first an arm lock. Basically, if the guy has his arms up in front of his face, he's trying to block, you're going to attack an arm. Striking with the opposite hand. Now, when you come down, it's really important to put this as tight as you can up against his neck. That's going to prevent him from trying to straighten out his arm. Now, if you notice, he's not grabbing the wrist. Instead, he has his wrist on top of the wrist. And there's going to be a reason for that. And we're going to show you that in a minute. Now, he's going to take his other hand. He's going to fish it up underneath it and grab it close as he can to his wrist. Just like that. Now, he's going to roll that wrist back, turning this fist this way, lifting up his elbow, and getting a submission. One of the things that a lot of people do is they just pin this arm down like this with the hand. If you just pin your hand down like that, and you got a strong guy underneath you, he can sometimes straighten that arm out and muscle it out. So what you want to do is, you pin it down with the wrist, and then you roll it, and you lock. Now that makes his hand a lot weaker, and also easier to submit when you just lift up your elbow and pull it. So that's the first one. Let's take a look at that again from the very beginning. You start off on top, you put the hand up, drive it down. Elbow is important because this allows the hand to stay at a perfect L. If your elbow is away from his neck, first it gives him movement with his head, he can move a lot easier, and that arm straightens out even more. So it's important. That tricep goes tight up against here. Now, the wrist is on here nice and tight. Pulls it across, grips it tight, lifts up, and pulls. Pretty simple. Let's take a look at this from the start to the finish. Drives, nice and tight, and lifts it up. Second one that we're going to do is if the opponent starts to push you away. You're on top, he's starting to push. You're going to put one hand underneath, one hand on top, get up and pivot, lay down, arm bar. Again. Your opponent goes to push you off. One hand goes on top, rotate, lock. Make sure your legs are on squeezing tight. They're down. Preferably take your foot and turn his face away from you. This prevents your opponent from trying to turn into you that way. Once again, from the mount, the opponent tries to push off. You're in a high mount. One hand under, one hand over. Push your face away. Lock. Lift up the hips. Get the submission. Next technique from here is if the opponent grabs you and tries to pull you down towards him. As he goes to pull you down, take both your hands, fish them through. Drop your elbows to the ground. Now you're going to take one hand, place it underneath his neck. Make your bicep nice and tight up against it. Take your other hand, come up, squeeze across, grab your elbow, and scissors your hands, applying pressure to the trachea. And if you put enough pressure, you can crush that trachea that way. So let's look at this again. The opponent grabs you, pulls you down, you fish out, underneath, come up and over, squeeze down. Excellent. Now from that position, you can also do what is called a fist choke. Make your hand, your free hand into a fist, Place the knuckles only into the side of the neck, and then just apply pressure. And even though you might not get a submission, it'll make it so uncomfortable for the guy. He'll do something very sloppy, which will then give you a submission. So it's called a fist choke. And if you can't get it into the side of the throat because he kind of turtles up with his shoulders, place it into the side of his jaw and then squeeze. And again, adds a lot of pressure, some pain, some discomfort. You may get a tap. If not, the guy will definitely start to move around and get an opening. The last thing that we're going to take a look at is if the opponent grabs your hands. He's holding your hands because you're trying to strike him or you're trying to do something. You're going to do what we call driving the bus. It's a big circle. Make a big circle. Let's look at that again. You can do it with either hand. It doesn't make a difference. Now what you do is you're going to knock away one of his hands with his own hand and then grab his wrist. Let's take a look at that again. Big circle, knocking away and grabbing. Now from there, we can do a wrist pin. Come around, lift him up so that he's trapped. Put that elbow into the center of your body, pin it against with this leg, and then just lift him up and apply pressure to the wrist. Real simple. Let's try that again. Guy grabs your arms, big circle, slide it up to the wrist. Key lock, come on up top, and then pull up, tap. Last one we're going to do from there is a tight arm shoulder wrap. Again, the guy grabs your arms. You're going to do that same escape. This time, drive his hand to the ground. Come underneath, grab the wrist. Now with your free hand, come in between and knife it against the side of his neck. Now you're going to pull with both arms in opposite directions and therefore getting a choke. Let's look at that again. Guy grabs your hands. Drive the bus, drive it down, scoot up, trap that hand. Come in and through, knife it, and raise up both arms. And you get the submission. So these are our submissions from the mount.